Hi everybody, my name is Sarah and welcome back to Future Zoologist Academy. I am so excited for our lesson today because we are talking about one of my all-time favorite lizards. A lizard who is so mysterious, who spends so much time underground that scientists don't even know how many of them exist in the wild. And yet, we've learned some amazing things about them. Let's see what we can learn today about a Gila monster. Gila monsters are a species of lizard that live in the deserts in the southwestern part of the United States and the northern part of Mexico. They get the name Gila monster from the Gila River Basin, which is an area in the southwestern United States where Gila monsters live. Gila monsters belong to a small family of lizards that have a few unusual traits in common, one of those traits being they are venomous. We'll come back to their venom in just a little bit. Gila monsters are an easily identified lizard because of their bumpy skin, their fat tail, and their orange and black colors. And as it turns out, each of these traits is actually a very helpful adaptation. Let's start with the Gila monster's bumpy appearance. Gila monsters are so bumpy because each one of their scales contains a small oval-shaped bone. And these bony scales get a special name. We call them osteoderms. Osteo means bone and derm means skin. So osteoderm translates to bone skin. And these osteoderms give Gila monsters an extra layer of protection on their body, which can be very helpful, especially when males are fighting with each other, or if there happens to be a predator, maybe something like an owl or a bobcat. Now let's move on to their fat tails, and I'm not being rude. It is actually fat that is stored inside of their tails. Gila monsters store fat in their tail the same way that a camel stores fat in their humps. When food is available, Gila monsters eat a lot all at once, trying to build up that fat supply in their tail. Then, when times of the year approach where food and water are not as readily available, Gila monsters can metabolize or break down the fat in their tail, and it turns into two very important things. It turns into energy, which we usually get from eating food, and it turns into water. Storing fat is an especially helpful adaptation for animals in the desert because of how scarce food and water can be. It's especially helpful for Gila monsters who spend upwards of 90% of their lives underground. In the winter, Gila monsters go underground or into a rocky shelter in kind of like a cold-blooded animal's version of hibernation. We call it brumation. So they spend the winters brumating, and they avoid the very hot summer temperatures by sheltering in the same place, mostly only coming out at nighttime or after heavy rainfall. Otherwise, they're spending their time sheltered and relying on the fat stored in their tail for energy and water. Now let's go ahead and move on to those orange and black colors that we mentioned before. Scientists hypothesize that the colors and patterns of a Gila monster might actually have a couple jobs. So I want to give you a moment to pause the video and make a hypothesis. What do you think the colors and patterns of a Gila monster's scales would be most helpful with? Alright, let's talk. Scientists hypothesize that the colors and patterns of a Gila monster's scales have two main jobs. The first being to camouflage. The desert has very coarse, rocky sand, and so the light, dark, speckled patterns of a Gila monster's scales would help them blend in with the desert sand, or maybe even the shadows of a bush that a Gila monster might be hiding underneath. In addition to camouflage, scientists also hypothesize that the bright orange color from their scales might serve as a warning to potential predators saying, "Hey, I am venomous, you do not want to mess with me." Let's talk a little bit more about that venom. Gila monsters and their relatives are very unique for lizards because they are venomous. The only other lizard that scientists hypothesize is venomous is the Komodo dragon, and there's still quite a bit of debate about that. For Gila monsters and their relatives, scientists hypothesize that they produce venom in their salivary glands. We have salivary glands too. For us, it produces our saliva or our spit. For Gila monsters and their relatives, it also produces venom, but they don't have any fangs. When a Gila monster bites down on something, the venom seeps out of their glands and into these special grooves in their teeth. When a Gila monster bites something, they often bite hard, clamp down, and maybe even chew a little bit without opening their mouth. This way, all the venom will seep into whatever they might be biting. Now, while being bit by a Gila monster would be incredibly unpleasant, their venom is not strong enough to kill an adult human. Scientists hypothesize that Gila monsters and their relatives developed their venom more so to defend themselves from predators rather than to help them catch prey. Now, Gila monsters are carnivores, they are meat eaters, but they tend to focus more on prey that is very slow moving, if it moves at all. Gila monsters tend to prey heavily on things like small rodents or small rabbits, but they might also eat things like birds or snakes or insects, but especially eggs. They like to eat the eggs of things like ground nesting birds or even other reptiles. When food is available for a Gila monster, they can eat upward of a third of their body weight in a single meal. Now, of course, before they eat their food, they must be able to find their food. And Gila monsters typically find their food using their very powerful sense of smell. Something they have in common with a snake is that they actually have the ability to smell with their tongue. It's even forked on the end, like a snake's tongue. And this is very helpful in allowing them to find their food, but it can also be very helpful in allowing them to find potential mates. Gila monster breeding season usually takes place in the spring after they emerge from their brumation. During this time, we often see males wrestling or fighting for access to a mate. After they mate, female will lay their eggs more into the start of summer in around June. They usually lay their eggs underground in a burrow. Now, scientists didn't know for a long time when exactly these eggs hatched, but recently we discovered that the eggs seem to hatch in the fall, but the hatchlings don't actually emerge from their underground burrow until the next year in springtime when food is more available. Scientists don't exactly know how long a Gila monster can live in the wild, but it's a little bit easier for us to measure in captivity, where we've seen them living upwards of 40 years, which is a very long time for a lizard. In the wild, Gila monsters are very hard for us to study because they spend so much time underground. As we said at the start of our lesson, they spend so much time underground that we don't even know how many of them exist in the wild, so it's hard for us to determine if they're endangered or not. Now, while we don't know if they're endangered or not, Gila monsters still give us a really great reason to protect them. Aside from they're really cool and fascinating for us to learn about, scientists have actually been able to use a Gila monster's venom to create a very helpful medication for people with diabetes, which is a disease that affects the amount of sugar in our bloodstream. Scientists have learned how to take a special compound from the Gila monster's venom that can be used to treat this disease. Gila monsters are certainly not the only animal that we've been able to study to either mimic things that they produce or things that they do to create things that can be beneficial for humans. There are millions of animals that probably have not yet been discovered yet that very well may hold the cure or the treatment to all sorts of different diseases that humans have. And this is just one of the many reasons why it's incredibly important that we protect animals and wild places. All right, you guys, thank you so very much for joining me for our Gila monster lesson today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning all about this unusual venomous lizard. If you'd like to learn even more, please be sure to visit that link below. Check out quizzes, activities, projects, and so much more. And I can't wait to see you at our next Future Zoologist Academy lesson. Thank you very much. Bye.